Have you ever walked into a place where you were supposed to belong, only to be treated like you didn't imagine standing in the lobby of a bank, where you hold the highest authority, yet being told you should go to the welfare office instead? What would you do if the very manager sworn to serve you called 911 to have you removed, painting you as a threat in front of strangers? This isn't just a story of arrogance or bias. It's about a moment of truth. One woman, calm and steady, had a choice to shrink under humiliation or to reveal the power she carried all along. And now, I want you to ask yourself, if it were you, standing in her shoes, with the crowd watching and the world ready to judge, would you stay silent, or would you stand tall tonight? You'll witness how one phone call meant to destroy her career instead changed an entire system. Stay with us, because this story isn't just about banking. It's about dignity, courage, and the price of silence. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that matter. The lobby of Union Federal Bank in Midtown Atlanta had the kind of polished, quiet people associated with money. Marble floors reflected the afternoon light. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish, and every sound seemed sharper against the silence. Heels clicked, pens tapped, whispers drifted like static. That quiet was broken when branch manager Robert Kane stepped forward, blocking a woman's path to the VIP counter. He lifted his chin, smirk tugging at his lips. "Excuse me, miss," he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "The welfare office is 3 blocks down that way." His hand gestured toward the street as if he were doing her a favor. The words cut through the lobby like glass against tile. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. A dozen customers froze, their eyes darting between the manager in his navy suit and the black woman standing still in front of him. Doctor. Maya Ellison did not move. Her leather briefcase hung by her side, her tailored jacket perfectly pressed. Her calm face revealed nothing, though a flicker of something hurt or recognition passed briefly through her eyes. The silence deepened. Somewhere, a phone camera clicked on. Maya's platinum credit card glinted in the light as she adjusted her purse strap. The small detail seemed to mock Robert's assumption, but he didn't notice. His voice dripped with condescension. "Security," Robert called over his shoulder, still blocking her way. "We've got someone here who doesn't seem to understand our policies." The security guard, Paul Simmons, shifted uncomfortably by the door. At 55, with more than 2 decades in the job, he had seen enough confrontations to know when something felt wrong, and something here felt wrong, very wrong. Behind Maya, an elderly woman in a floral blouse shook her head slowly, lips pressed into a thin line. She had been coming to this bank for over 30 years. To her, the scene unfolding was not just rude, it was shameful. "Sir," Maya said evenly, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone used to boardrooms and negotiations. "I am here about my account portfolio." Her words were simple, but the way Robert laughed made them sound absurd, at least to him. He turned toward the other customers, inviting them to share his disbelief. "Your account portfolio." His chuckle echoed against the marble. "Ma'am, this is Union Federal Bank, not a check-cashing store." The insult landed heavy. Several customers shifted uncomfortably, some looking down at their shoes. The line between embarrassment and complicity blurred as silence swallowed the room. Near the entrance, a young woman pulled out her phone and started streaming live. Her whisper into the mic trembled. "Y'all, you need to see this. This man is straight up disrespecting her." The viewer count ticked upward. Maya remained composed. Her jaw tightened slightly, but her eyes stayed steady on Robert. Inside, a familiar ache stirred. She had faced versions of this moment before being mistaken for less than she was, having her competence questioned before she could even speak. But today felt different. She checked her watch. The hands pointed to 2:50 p.m. She had 10 minutes before her 3 o'clock meeting upstairs, a meeting she could not miss. Her voice stayed calm. "I understand there may be some confusion," she said. "Could I please speak with someone about my banking relationship here?" Robert crossed his arms, his tone sharp and patronizing. "Do you even have proper identification? Do you actually have an account here?" His words suggested he already knew the answer, that the answer had to be no. Behind the teller line, Angela Reed, a senior employee, gripped her pen tighter. In 8 years working here, she'd never seen her manager speak so bluntly, so cruelly. Something inside her whispered, "This isn't just wrong, it's dangerous." The lobby felt like a stage, every customer a witness. The quiet dignity in Maya's voice clashed with Robert's sneering certainty. The imbalance hung in the air like smoke. Another customer muttered under his breath, "Man, this isn't right." His wife nudged his arm, urging him to stay quiet. Not everyone was ready to speak, but everyone felt the weight of what was happening. At the edge of the crowd, the elderly woman, the one who had shaken her head, finally raised her phone and began recording. Her hands trembled slightly, but her determination was clear. She whispered to herself, "People need to see this." The live stream count climbed again, dozens turned into hundreds. Comments scrolled quickly. "This is discrimination. What's her name? Don't let them push her out." Through it all, Maya stood perfectly still. She had learned long ago that sometimes silence was the most powerful weapon. Every second she held her ground. The spotlight shifted from her supposed mistake to Robert's blatant cruelty. Inside, though, a battle raged. She remembered being a young girl in South Carolina, watching her mother denied a loan she qualified for. She remembered the humiliation in her father's eyes when a banker told him to try the credit union down the street. Those wounds never fully healed. And now, here she stood, decades later, CEO of Horizon Capital Partners, majority shareholder of Union Federal Bank, the very institution her family had once been excluded from. And still, prejudice stood in her way, dressed in a suit and tie, carrying the title of branch manager. Maya took a slow breath. Her heart rate steadied. She knew something Robert could not possibly imagine. Within minutes, his words would echo far beyond this marble lobby. For now, she simply said, "I'll wait. I have a meeting at 3. The crowd leaned closer. The tension coiled tighter. The story had just begun. Dr. Maya Ellison stood in the middle of the lobby, her leather briefcase brushing against her knee each time she shifted her weight. She held herself with a quiet grace that belied the storm Robert Kane had unleashed. To the casual observer, She looked like any professional woman on her way to a meeting. To those who knew her story, she was something far more. The briefcase itself told part of that story. It was scuffed at the edges, not from neglect, but from years of use in boardrooms, courtrooms, and late-night strategy sessions. Maya had carried that same case into her first investor meeting 12 years ago, when most people in the room had underestimated her. She carried it into congressional hearings when she testified about fair lending practices, and she carried it here today, into a bank she partly owned. Her posture shoulders squared, chin level was not an accident. It had been learned, practiced, sharpened against years of subtle and not so subtle challenges. People often described Maya as calm, but calmness had never come easily. It was a discipline, born from the choice to meet contempt with composure. Behind her, whispers moved through the lobby like a restless wind. Customers exchanged glances, unsure whether to intervene or to remain silent. Some avoided her eyes entirely, afraid of what standing with her might cost them. But others watched closely, curious about the woman who did not flinch when confronted. Maya's thoughts wandered briefly, uninvited, to her childhood. She remembered a kitchen table covered in bills, her mother's hands pressed to her forehead in frustration. She remembered sitting beside her father as he filled out forms for a loan he never received. The bank officer back then had spoken with the same sharp certainty Robert Kane now used, as if denying dignity were part of the job. She had promised herself, as a teenager, that if she ever held power, she would change the terms of that conversation. She would build systems that measured people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their work, their vision, their persistence. Horizon Capital Partners, the firm she now led, had been her answer to that promise. But even promises fulfilled did not erase the sting of moments like this one. Maya felt the familiar ache rise again, then forced herself to breathe slowly, to let the ache sharpen her focus instead of breaking it. She had learned that people often saw only what they expected to see. To Robert, she was not a leader, not a decision-maker, not a majority shareholder. She was simply a black woman in a lobby who did not belong. The irony pressed in on her. Upstairs, at that very moment, preparations were underway for a meeting where her signature alone could approve or reject millions in investments. Yet here, a man who reported to someone who ultimately reported to her was trying to push her toward the door. "Do you even have an account here?" Robert's voice rang out again, heavy with disdain. Maya considered answering. She considered pulling out the documents in her briefcase, the ones that bore her name beside the word chairwoman. But no, not yet. Timing mattered. She understood the power of allowing someone to reveal who they were before she revealed who she was. Angela Reed, standing behind the teller counter, shifted in place, her stomach twisted with unease. She had seen Robert belittle customers before, but never like this. She thought of the training modules on diversity and customer respect, the ones managers skipped through without discussion. Her conscience urged her to speak, but fear tethered her tongue. Near the entrance, Mrs. Ruth Gallagher kept her phone steady. The live stream chat scrolled faster now. "She's so calm. Look how he's treating her. This is unbelievable." 100 viewers had become 500. The internet was already choosing sides. Inside her own mind, Maya wrestled with questions she had asked 1,000 times. How many times must a person prove their worth? How much patience must be summoned to counter cruelty? Was dignity something you defended moment by moment, or something you carried so firmly it could not be taken? Her eyes moved to the clock again. 2:55 m. 5 minutes. 5 minutes before the faces around this lobby learned exactly who she was. Robert leaned closer, his voice dropping to a sneer. "Ma'am, we serve serious clients here. Maybe you should try a smaller branch. Or, like I said, the welfare office." The insult struck harder the second time, not because it was true, but because it carried the smug confidence of someone who believed he would face no consequences. Maya's hands tightened around her briefcase handle. She thought of her staff, her partners, her investors, people who trusted her to keep composure no matter the provocation. She inhaled deeply, then exhaled slowly, her words measured. "I assure you, Mr. Kane, I belong here, perhaps more than you realize." The sentence hovered in the air, quiet but weighted. Customers perked up, sensing something in her tone. Robert laughed again, but the sound was thinner now, less certain. Angela scribbled something on a notepad, 2 words, then quickly tore the page and tucked it into her pocket. She did not yet know when she would need them, but she wanted to record everything. Maya's mind drifted again, not into the past but into the possible future. She imagined this scene replaying online, in living rooms and offices across the country. She imagined the comments, the debates, the lessons people might draw. She did not crave that spotlight, but she recognized its power. For now, though, she kept her gaze steady. She was a woman holding a briefcase, waiting for her meeting. She was also the unseen center of the storm gathering in that marble lobby. The clock ticked toward 3. The lobby had grown heavier, as though the air itself thickened with every word Robert Kane threw. Customers shifted from one foot to the other, a hush falling each time he opened his mouth. What had started as a careless insult was stretching into a performance, with Robert playing the lead role of authority unchecked. He stepped closer to Dr. Maya Ellison, voice raised. "Are you even listening to me? You can't just waltz in here with some bag and expect us to hand you private banking access. Do you even understand how this works?" The way he asked the question made it clear he didn't expect an answer. His smirk was the kind that assumed the punchline was already his. Maya stood her ground. Her breathing remained steady, her face unreadable. Inside, though, she weighed her options. She could have ended this with a single sentence, revealed her identity, silenced him. But silence had a value too. Sometimes letting arrogance bloom meant its collapse would be louder. Behind the counter, Angela Reed felt her stomach tighten again. She had worked under Robert for years, had seen his sharp tongue slice through staff morale, had seen him dismiss complaints like swatting flies. But this was different. This wasn't just an internal problem. It was happening in public, in front of customers, in front of cameras. Angela reached for her drawer, pulling out a small notebook she often carried. She pretended to adjust a stack of receipts, but her pen scratched across the page. 57 p.m. Kane, mocking client again. Disrespectful tone, possible bias. She paused, then underlined the last two words. Robert turned to the waiting customers, shrugging in exaggerated disbelief. Folks, this is what I mean when I say people just don't understand how serious finance works. We're not some corner shop. We handle clients with millions under management. We don't have time for nonsense. Murmurs rippled through the lobby. Some looked at Maya with sympathy, others with curiosity, but all recognized that Robert was trying to recruit them as his audience. His words weren't just directed at her anymore, they were meant to shape how everyone else saw her. Near the entrance, Mrs. Ruth Gallagher's phone was still raised. Her hands had stopped trembling. Her voice, soft but clear, cut across the room. You should be ashamed of yourself. The words startled Robert. He spun toward the elderly woman. Excuse me, I said, Ruth repeated. You should be ashamed. That woman has stood here quietly, with more dignity than you've shown in all your shouting. Gasps followed. A man in line muttered, She's right, a young woman whispered to her partner. I can't believe this is happening. Robert's face flushed red, but he forced a smile. Ma'am, please stay out of matters you don't understand. Oh, I understand just fine, Ruth replied, steady as stone, and so will everyone watching. She tilted her phone toward him, making sure he saw the small red dot that meant she was streaming live. The viewer count passed 800. Comments poured in. He's digging his own grave. Who is she? That lady is a queen for staying calm. Robert hesitated for the first time. The bravado cracked, but he quickly gathered himself, doubling down. He gestured toward Maya's briefcase. If you really have business here, show me. Otherwise, I'll have to ask you to leave. Maya let the silence stretch. Then, slowly, she lifted the briefcase onto the counter. The sound of metal clasp snapping open echoed in the stillness. She removed a leather portfolio, its cover embossed with her initials. She placed it carefully in front of him. Robert glanced at it but did not open it. Instead, he scoffed. Anyone can carry around fancy stationery. Doesn't prove a thing. Angela's pen pressed harder into the page of her notebook. She knew enough about client confidentiality to recognize that Maya was offering documentation. Refusing even to look was more than arrogance. It was negligence. Paul Simmons, the security guard, shifted again near the door. He caught Maya's eyes for the briefest moment. In them, he saw not fear, but a steadiness that unsettled him. He thought of his own daughter, 28 and ambitious, who had already told him about times she'd been underestimated at work. Paul clenched his jaw. He had been hired to maintain order, but he wondered now if true order required more than just following Robert's commands. Robert leaned forward, lowering his voice, but not enough to escape the phones recording around him. Listen, I don't know what game you're playing, but you're wasting my time, and if you don't step aside, I'll have to call the police. The threat shifted the energy in the room. Whispers turned to sharp intakes of breath. The tension was no longer subtle. It was electric. Maya glanced again at the clock. 2:59 p.m. 1 minute. She thought of the boardroom upstairs, the polished table waiting for her arrival. She thought of the irony that she could, in less than an hour, approve a line of credit larger than Robert's entire branch handled in a quarter. And yet, here she was, being treated like a trespasser. Inside, anger flared, but she contained it. Her father used to say, "Fire burns brightest when contained by steel." She had learned to be that steel. Her reply came measured, quiet, but edged with certainty. "Do what you think you need to do. Mr. Kane, I will be right here." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Customers leaned closer, phones tilted higher. The live stream crossed 1,000 viewers. Robert pulled out his phone, jaw tight, and began dialing. His voice carried as he spoke into the receiver. "Yes, I need officers at Union Federal, Midtown Branch. We have a situation. A woman refusing to leave, possibly threatening." The words twisted the truth beyond recognition. Maya's composure never faltered, but her eyes closed briefly, her breath catching in her chest. Inside, memories of past injustices surged, moments where lies like this one had ruined lives. She opened her eyes again, steady. She knew this moment would not end as Robert expected. The second hand on the clock swept to the top. 3 o'clock had arrived. Robert Kane's voice carried across the lobby as he spoke into his phone. "Yes, this is Robert Kane, branch manager at Union Federal, Midtown Atlanta. I need officers dispatched immediately. We have a black female, mid-40s, refusing to leave, acting aggressive, possibly threatening staff." Every word he said seemed louder than the last, echoing off the marble walls. Customers stiffened. Some exchanged uneasy glances. Others looked directly at Dr. Maya Ellison, who stood calm, unmoving, her hands folded gently over her briefcase. To anyone paying attention, she had done nothing but stand quietly. And yet, in Robert's telling, she was a danger. Maya's eyes closed for a fraction of a second. Inside, a familiar chill spread. She had seen how quickly a false report could escalate, how easily words like threatening or refusing could change the course of a life. But when she opened her eyes again, her face remained composed, her breath steady. Angela Reed, behind the teller counter, felt her heart hammer. She looked at Maya, then at Robert. Her pen scratched furiously into her notebook. 3:01 p.m. Kane calls police. False claim, aggressive behavior. She underlined it twice. By the door, Officer Paul Simmons shifted his stance. He was a security guard, not sworn police, but he understood enough about how quickly this could spiral. He thought of the times he had witnessed confrontations escalate in seconds, sometimes ending with handcuffs, sometimes worse. His gaze flicked between Robert and Maya. His instincts told him the danger in the room didn't come from the woman standing still. Mrs. Ruth Gallagher raised her phone higher. "He's lying," she whispered into the live stream. "This woman hasn't done a thing. She's been calm the entire time. You all can see it." Comments poured in, hundreds of strangers confirming what Ruth's trembling voice insisted. "We see it. We believe you. Keep recording." Robert lowered his phone, satisfied with the call, his chest puffed out as if he had won some unspoken battle. "They'll be here soon," he announced, "and when they arrive, we'll handle this properly." His eyes swept the room, seeking approval, but what he found was silence. Even those who had been hesitant before now looked uneasy. Maya checked her watch again. 3:02 p.m. 2 minutes into a meeting she was expected to lead upstairs. 2 minutes late because of a man who thought his prejudice could outweigh her patience. She considered speaking now, revealing the truth. But no. Timing mattered. Sometimes you let arrogance dig its own grave. Angela looked at her manager, then at the woman standing still. Her conscience screamed. She typed a message into her phone under the desk. Regional manager must know. Urgent. Kane, escalating falsely. Come now. She pressed send, heart racing. Robert turned back to Maya, his tone smug. You really should have just walked out when I gave you the chance. Now it's out of your hands. Maya's reply was quiet, almost gentle. Mr. Kane, nothing here is out of my hands. The words sent a ripple through the room. Customers leaned in. Phones lifted higher. It was a small sentence, but it carried a weight that made Robert falter for half a second before regaining his grin. Big talk for someone about to be escorted out. He sneered. Maya let the insult pass. Inside her, the ache of memory stirred again her father's face the day he was denied a business loan despite perfect credit. Her mother's quiet tears at the kitchen table. She had promised herself those stories would not end with her. She had built Horizon Capital Partners from the ground up, fought for every inch of credibility, every contract, every hard-won alliance, and now, standing in this lobby, she knew this confrontation would not be her undoing. It would be his. The live stream count passed 2,000. Comments rolled faster. Who is she? She's strong. I can feel it. This is about to backfire on him. Officer Simmons stepped closer, lowering his voice to Robert. You sure you want to go this route? She hasn't done anything wrong. If this goes bad, it's on you. Robert waved him off. Stay in your lane. Paul, I know how to handle my branch. Paul's jaw clenched. He had been told those words before stay in your lane when he raised concerns about unfair treatment of customers. He had stayed quiet then, but as he watched Maya standing steady, dignity intact, something inside him shifted. He wasn't sure how, but he knew he wouldn't remain silent much longer. At the counter, Angela whispered to herself, Please, let Stephen get here soon. She thought of her job, her mortgage, her 2 kids at home. She'd stayed silent too many times. Today felt different. Maya's phone buzzed softly in her pocket. She ignored it. Her eyes stayed on Robert. Her patience was not weakness, it was strategy. She could feel the lobby shifting, witnesses recognizing the imbalance, strangers online rallying in real time. Robert thought the police call gave him power. He didn't yet realize it had given her a stage. By 3:05, the lobby felt like a theater at intermission, everyone waiting for the next act. The tension hummed, fragile and sharp. Ruth's voice rose again, firmer this time. She hasn't threatened anyone. We all see it. You lied to the police, young man. Robert turned on her, frustration spilling over. Enough from you. You're disrupting this branch. But Ruth didn't lower her phone. Disruption is telling lies about a woman who's done nothing but stand here. The chat exploded. Tell him. Ruth, protect her. This is history in the making. Maya allowed herself the faintest smile. Not at Robert, but at the courage in Ruth's voice, at the way strangers online were joining hands with a woman they had never met. Dignity was contagious. She glanced once more at her watch. 3:06 p.m. The meeting upstairs was in full swing. Soon, very soon, the truth would descend like a curtain falling. And when it did, Robert Kane would find himself center stage, exposed under a spotlight he never expected. The minutes stretched like hours. Customers who had first stood stiff and silent now felt their own unease grow too heavy to ignore. Some clutched their purses tighter. Others shifted their weight as if trying to shrink away from the tension. The marble lobby, usually a place of sterile transactions and quick nods, now pulsed with the raw electricity of a stage where truth was being tested. Dr. Maya Ellison remained still, her expression calm, but behind her eyes thoughts churned. She weighed the silence of those around her against the possibility of courage. How many people in this room had seen moments like this before, seen them, felt them, but chosen to say nothing? She wondered if this time would be different. Angela Reed glanced at her phone again. She had sent the message already, the one pleading for Regional Manager Stephen Marsh to come immediately. No reply yet. Her palms were damp. She thought of her children at home, the example she wanted to set. She had told them once, always stand up when you see something wrong. But here she was, frozen at her station, her pen shaken in her hand. Officer Paul Simmons moved closer to the center of the lobby. His steps echoed lightly, but they drew attention. He didn't speak yet, but his posture changed. He no longer stood as a silent enforcer at the edge of the room. His presence now carried a question, a readiness. Robert Kane strutted near the counter, every movement exaggerated as if to show he was in control. But cracks showed. His laugh had lost its ease. His voice carried a strain. He knew the police were on their way. Yet he sensed the room's loyalty was slipping from his grasp. And then a sound rose, a voice trembling but determined. "Excuse me," said a man in a gray jacket near the back of the line. He cleared his throat. I just want to say, I've been here the whole time." She hasn't raised her voice once. She hasn't threatened anyone. His hand shook slightly as he gestured toward Maya. If anything, she's been the most respectful person in this lobby. The words fell heavy. People turned, surprised that someone had broken the barrier of silence. The man's wife tugged at his sleeve, whispering urgently, but he stood his ground. Robert's jaw tightened. "Sir, please refrain from interfering in official branch matters." "It's not interference," the man replied. "It's the truth." Mrs. Ruth Gallagher smiled faintly behind her phone. "Bless you," she whispered, and her live stream caught the exchange. Comments erupted. "Yes. More people need to speak up, protect her. This is how change starts." Maya inclined her head ever so slightly toward the man, a silent acknowledgement of his courage. Her heart steadied. The ripple had begun. Angela bit her lip. Something inside her shifted. She remembered every time Robert had dismissed her suggestions. Every time she had swallowed frustration to keep her job. But she also remembered the day her daughter came home crying because a teacher had assumed she wasn't capable of advanced math. She remembered saying, "You prove them wrong." Her hand trembled as she stood taller behind the counter. Her voice cracked at first, but then it steadied. I can confirm what he said. She hasn't done anything wrong. She came here politely. The way she's been treated is not right. The lobby froze. Angela had spoken against her manager, out loud, on record. Robert's face turned crimson. "You," he snapped, "in my office, now." But Angela didn't move. Her pen tapped nervously against the counter, yet she held his gaze. "I'll go when I need to, but I'm not lying for you." Maya watched the scene unfold, admiration blooming quietly inside her. The cracks were widening. Silence was giving way to truth. Officer Simmons stepped closer. "I've been here the whole time, too," he said. His baritone carried weight. No threats, no aggression, just a customer being treated with disrespect. Robert spun toward him, disbelief etched across his features. "Paul, you work for me?" Paul shook his head slowly. "No, I work for this branch, and for what's right. I won't stand by if someone's being lied about." The lobby stirred with energy now. Customers looked at one another, emboldened. It was as if a dam had cracked. A woman near the teller line whispered, "He's right. We all saw it." Another nodded, murmuring agreement. Robert's grip on the room slipped further. He barked orders, but his voice no longer carried authority. It sounded desperate. "Everyone just mind your business. The police are on their way, but the police weren't here yet." And in that gap, truth had found its footing. Maya drew a slow breath, her voice soft but clear. "Thank you," she said, addressing the customers, the staff, the guard. "Thank you for seeing what's real." Her eyes lingered on Angela, on Paul, on Ruth, on the man in gray. Each of them had stepped across the fragile line between silence and witness. Her watch ticked to 3:10 p.m. She was 10 minutes late now. Upstairs, her colleagues must be wondering where she was. But here, in this lobby, something larger was happening. It was no longer just her moment. It was theirs too. For the first time since Robert's words had cut the air, Maya allowed herself a smile, not one of triumph, but of recognition. The weight was shifting. The balance of power in the room was no longer his alone to wield. And she knew, with a certainty that steadied her, that when the next moment came, when the police arrived, when Stephen Marsh appeared, when the truth could no longer be hidden, Robert Kane would discover just how dangerous dignity could be when it refused to bow. The wail of sirens reached the lobby before flashing lights streaked against the polished glass. Every head turned toward the entrance. For some, relief spread across their faces. Order was coming. For others, dread tightened their chests. Would the truth survive the weight of uniforms and badges, Doctor? Maya Ellison's gaze remained steady. Her heart beat a touch faster, but she held her composure. In her years of navigating boardrooms, she had learned that power often arrived wrapped in uniforms or titles, and those who shouted loudest expected obedience. But she also knew truth had its own authority. Robert Kane straightened his tie and smoothed his jacket. A smug grin returned, though it looked more like a mask than before. Finally, he muttered, "This circus ends." He positioned himself squarely near the front desk, ready to greet the officers as though he were the victim. The double doors slid open, and two Atlanta police officers stepped inside, their boots echoing against the marble. Officer Daniels, tall and sharp-eyed, led the way. Behind him came Officer Lewis, younger, cautious, scanning the crowd with uncertainty. Manager Kane Daniels asked, his voice crisp. "Yes." "Thank God you're here," Robert said quickly, stepping forward. "We've got a situation. An aggressive trespasser refuses to leave the premises. She's disturbing customers, intimidating staff." Before he could finish, Mrs. Ruth Gallagher's voice pierced through. "That's a lie, and I've got it all on video." She raised her phone high, her live stream still rolling. Thousands of viewers were commenting in real time. Daniels hesitated, his gaze shifting between Robert's flushed face and Ruth's steady hand. "Ma'am, I'll need to see that." "Happy to share," Ruth replied firmly. Robert's confidence faltered. "You can't take her word over mine. I'm the manager here, and I'm the customer you tried to humiliate," Maya said quietly, stepping into view. Her voice carried no anger, just calm authority. For the first time, both officers looked at her directly. They saw a woman in a tailored suit, posture dignified, eyes unwavering. She did not fit the picture Robert had painted. Angela Reed spoke up from behind the counter. "Officers, I work here. She hasn't been aggressive at all. The only raised voice has been Mr. Kane's." Paul Simmons added, "I've been security here 12 years. Not once did she act threatening." The call was false. Daniels narrowed his eyes at Robert. "You failed to mention multiple witnesses." Robert's face turned scarlet. "They're lying for her. Don't you see? She's manipulating them." But his words rang hollow in the charged silence. Customers shifted uncomfortably, some nodding at Maya, others whispering, "We saw it too." Officer Lewis stepped closer to Maya. "Ma'am, do you have identification?" "Yes," Maya replied calmly, reaching into her briefcase. She produced a slim wallet, flipping it open to reveal a black Centurion card and a sleek ID card embossed with the Horizon Capital Partners crest. She held them steady, her hand not trembling in the slightest. Lewis glanced at the card, then back at her face. Something clicked recognition. He whispered to Daniels, who frowned. "Ma'am, could you state your name for the record, Dr. Maya Ellison?" she said clearly. "Chief Executive Officer of Horizon Capital Partners, majority shareholder and chairwoman of Union Federal Bank, including this branch." The room went utterly still. Daniels blinked, his expression hardening toward Robert. "Wait, this woman owns the bank." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Angela's pen clattered onto the counter. Ruth let out a sharp laugh of disbelief. Paul Simmons nodded slowly, as though the final piece of a puzzle had fallen into place. Robert's mouth opened, then closed like a fish gasping for air. His earlier bravado drained from his body. He staggered back a step. That can't be true. She would have said earlier. Maya tilted her head slightly, her tone even. "You never asked. You assumed." The officers exchanged a look. Lewis scribbled notes while Daniels spoke firmly. "Mr. Kane, you reported an aggressive trespasser. From what I see and what multiple witnesses confirm, that report was false. Do you understand the seriousness of filing a false emergency call?" Robert stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. I I thought I was just protecting the branch. Protecting it? Maya asked, her voice finally carrying a blade of steel. By calling 911 on the very person who funds its operations, by painting me as a criminal in front of my own customers. Her words cut deeper than any shout. Robert's knees wobbled. The younger officer, Lewis, looked at Maya with newfound respect. Dr. Ellison, how would you like us to proceed? The question landed like thunder. Authority had shifted. The officers were no longer looking to Robert Kane for direction, they were deferring to her. Maya breathed in slowly. She considered vengeance. The sweet taste of humiliation turned back on the man who had tried to strip her dignity. But she also considered the weight of the eyes around her, the witnesses, the live stream audience, the staff who had finally spoken up. This was no longer just about Robert. It was about what happened next. You've done your job, she said softly to the officers. Please document the false call. I will handle the internal matter. Daniels nodded. Understood, ma'am. He turned to Robert. We'll be including your name in the incident report. Expect follow-up. Robert sagged against the counter, his chest heaving. His downfall had begun, and everyone knew it. Maya glanced at her watch. 3:20 p.m. She was 20 minutes late to the board meeting. But in this lobby, history was unfolding. She would not rush it. Stephen Marsh, the regional manager, finally appeared from the elevator, his face pale as he surveyed the scene. Cameras, witnesses, uniformed officers, and in the center, Maya Ellison, serene, commanding. He swallowed hard. Maya, he began, but the weight of her name on his lips betrayed that he already knew the truth. The next act was hers to script, and the world, both inside the marble walls and across thousands of screens, was waiting for her pen to write it. Stephen Marsh's shoes clicked too quickly across the marble, the sound betraying his nerves before his face did. He had rehearsed greetings on the elevator ride down, but all of them dissolved when his eyes fell on the tableau before him. Police officers standing firm, a crowd of customers buzzing, staff uneasy, phones raised high, and in the center, Dr. Maya Ellison, upright and composed, as if she had been preparing for this precise moment all her life. Dr. Ellison, Stephen said, forcing a smile that landed somewhere between flattery and fear. I didn't know you were visiting this branch today. That much is clear, Maya replied softly. Her voice didn't rise, but it commanded silence. The tension in the air bent toward her, as though the building itself recognized its true owner. Robert Kane tried to recover, sensing a slim chance to twist the narrative before it collapsed completely. Stephen, thank God you're here, he said quickly. This woman, she claims she doesn't claim. Officer Daniels interrupted coldly. She is. She just identified herself as the CEO and majority shareholder of this institution, and you, sir, made a false emergency call against her. Stephen's stomach dropped. He turned on Robert, fury and fear mingling in his eyes. Robert, what have you done? Robert sputtered. I was protecting the branch. She didn't look. He stopped himself, but the damage was done. His words hung there, naked, poisoned. Customers murmured. Ruth Gallagher muttered into her live stream. There it is. He said it without saying it. Maya adjusted her sleeve. the subtle motion signaling she was ready to move forward. "Stephen," she said, her eyes locking onto his. "We need to have a conversation. Not upstairs. Here." Stephen blinked. "Here in front of the people who witnessed everything," Maya said. "Transparency begins now." A hush fell over the lobby. The officers folded their arms. Customers leaned in. Angela Reed's heart pounded, sensing that the moment of truth was expanding beyond Robert Kane. Maya stepped forward, her heels striking a deliberate rhythm against the floor. Robert's actions today didn't sprout in isolation. They grew in soil that tolerated bias, negligence, and silence. "Stephen, that soil was under your watch." Stephen's face drained of color. He had handled crises before: data breaches, loan defaults, regulatory audits, but never this: a reckoning framed in moral terms, carried live across thousands of screens. "Maya," he said carefully, "I understand your frustration, but perhaps we should discuss compliance and oversight privately, where we can review reports." "No," Maya said firmly, "because reports were already filed. Complaints were already raised, and they were ignored." Her gaze shifted to Angela. "Tell me, Ms. Reed, how many times did you report concerns about Robert's treatment of customers?" Angela's throat tightened. Every eye turned toward her. Her instinct was to shrink, to protect herself. But Maya's steady expression offered quiet assurance. "3 times formally," Angela said at last, "and more informally. I sent emails. I spoke with supervisors. Nothing changed." Maya turned back to Stephen. "And those emails, those complaints, where did they go?" Stephen swallowed hard. His mind replayed months of flagged messages, moments when he had clicked dismiss, rationalizing that Robert's numbers looked fine, that customer churn was within tolerance. He realized, too late, that every dismissal had been a brick in the wall now crumbling around him. They were reviewed, he stammered, but perhaps not with the level of seriousness they deserved. "That lack of seriousness," Maya replied, her voice still calm, "is why we are standing in a lobby filled with witnesses, police officers, and cameras. It's why your branch manager thought he could call 911 on me and expect applause." The words cut deep. Even the customers felt their sting. Ruth Gallagher's voice trembled with vindication. "Say it, Maya. Say it all." Stephen's mind raced. He considered excuses, spin, promises of reform, but the look in Maya's eyes told him none would work. She wasn't negotiating. She was diagnosing. Robert, sensing his world collapsing, tried again to wriggle free. "This is being blown out of proportion." A simple misunderstanding. Maya raised her hand. The gesture silenced him. "Misunderstanding." Her eyes glinted. "Robert, you told me to find the welfare office. You called me a trespasser. You lied to emergency services. Tell me, what exactly did you misunderstand? My suit, my briefcase, or simply my skin?" The crowd gasped. Robert flinched as if the marble floor had struck him. He had no words left. Maya turned slowly, addressing everyone. "This isn't just about one man's prejudice. It's about a culture that enabled it. A culture that calculated risk in dollars but ignored the cost in dignity. That ends today." The lobby erupted with murmurs. Phones lifted higher, comments flooding streams, words like justice, accountability, and finally scrolled past Ruth's camera lens. Stephen Marsh realized he was trapped between two choices: admit negligence or fight a losing battle against the undeniable. Sweat pooled at his collar. He chose words that might save scraps of his career. "You're right. Dr. Ellison, the culture failed. I failed. But if you'll allow, I want to work with you to repair it." Maya studied him, her silence stretching long enough to tighten throats. Finally, she nodded once. "Repair begins with accountability. Robert Kane will tender his resignation immediately. And, Stephen, your future will depend entirely on how you respond to the reforms I'm about to announce." Robert's mouth fell open. "Resignation, you have a choice," Maya said, her tone even, almost gentle. "Resign with a neutral reference, or be terminated for cause, with documentation filed to every regulatory body. You know what that means." Robert's face collapsed into despair. He understood. His career in banking would be ash, scattered by whispers of his name. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy, waiting, holding its breath for the inevitable. Robert Kane finally whispered, "I resign." Maya inclined her head. So noted. A collective exhale swept the lobby. Customers shifted, some even smiling faintly, as if a toxin had been drawn from the room. But Maya wasn't finished. Her watch ticked past 3:30. Her board was waiting. Yet she knew the real boardroom had shifted down here, into the marble and glass, where truth and accountability met in public view. "Stephen," she said, "prepare yourself. The reckoning doesn't stop with Robert. This branch will not only survive, it will transform, and the world will watch it happen." The words hung in the air like a promise and a warning, carried live across thousands of screens, and everyone knew the real drama had only just begun. For a long beat, no one moved. Robert Kane's resignation still lingered in the air, a silent verdict hanging above the marble lobby. Phones buzzed, recording the stunned faces of customers, the relief etched into Angela's eyes, the tension fading from Paul's posture. It wasn't the end, though it was only the clearing of ground. Dr. Maya Ellison stepped forward. Her heels tapped with calm certainty as she turned, not toward Robert, but toward the staff and customers who had borne witness. Her voice was low, intimate, but it carried with clarity. "You all stood in the gap," she said. "Some quietly, some loudly. You spoke truth when it would have been easier to stay silent. That will not be forgotten." Angela's throat tightened. She felt both exposed and affirmed, as if Maya's gaze had seen through the trembling in her hands to the resolve underneath. Paul Simmons gave a slight nod, not of respect for her title, but for the integrity she carried. He had worked security long enough to know the difference between authority demanded and authority earned. Maya then turned to Stephen Marsh. "This branch will need immediate stabilization. Customers must know their dignity is safe here. Staff must know their voices matter. That begins now." Stephen swallowed, still shaken. "What do you have in mind?" Maya's lips curved into the faintest smile. "You'll see." She gestured to Angela. "Ms. Reed, step forward." Angela froze. Dozens of eyes shifted toward her. Her feet felt heavy, but something propelled her, the memory of her daughter's face, the courage she had borrowed from Maya's presence. She stepped into the open space. Today, Maya said, you demonstrated integrity at personal risk. You chose truth over silence. That is leadership. She turned to Stephen, effective immediately. Ms. Reed is appointed interim branch manager. Her record of service and her courage today warrant nothing less. A gasp swept the room. Angela's eyes widened, her mouth opening slightly in disbelief. Dr. Ellison, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Maya said gently. Say you'll lead with the same honesty you showed today. Tears stung Angela's eyes as she nodded. Yes, I'll do my best. Applause rippled from customers, soft at first, then swelling. Even the officers nodded, acknowledging the moment's wait. Robert, slumped near the counter, let out a bitter laugh. You're replacing me with a teller. Maya turned to him, her expression unflinching. No, Robert. I'm replacing you with someone who understands what leadership means. Leadership isn't about titles or bluster. It's about trust. His words died in his throat. Maya then addressed the officers. Thank you for your service today. Please include in your report that this branch will be undergoing immediate corrective oversight. I'll expect documentation within 48 hours. Officer Daniels tipped his hat slightly. You'll have it. Dr. Ellison. The crowd began to disperse, whispers filling the air. Some customers lingered, watching Maya with awe. Others approached Angela quietly, offering congratulations. Ruth Gallagher, still clutching her phone, ended her live stream with a shaky smile. Justice just happened in front of our eyes, she told her viewers. But Maya wasn't finished. She turned back to Stephen, her tone sharpening. This is only the beginning. Tomorrow morning, a task force will begin reviewing 5 years of complaints across all regional branches. Any patterns of bias, dismissal, or neglect will be exposed. Every ignored email will be traced. Every unresolved grievance will be addressed. Stephen's stomach twisted. He nodded, though sweat prickled at his collar. Understood. And Stephen, Maya added, her voice softening just slightly. Your willingness to cooperate will determine whether you remain part of the solution. Consider this your last opportunity. The implication was clear. His survival depended not on words but on action. Linda Perez, the assistant manager who had lingered quietly at the edges, finally stepped forward. Her voice was careful, measured. Dr. Ellison, I've worked under Robert for years. I didn't speak up as loudly as Angela, but I saw things that troubled me. If you're building something new, I want to help. Maya regarded her thoughtfully. Then help begins today. Transparency is the foundation. Write down what you've seen, submit it to Ms. Reed directly. No more whispers in the shadows. Yes, ma'am, Linda said, her voice tinged with relief. For the first time, the atmosphere in the lobby shifted from tense to hopeful. The heavy silence of fear had given way to the murmur of possibility. Customers walked out lighter, some even smiling, knowing they had witnessed something larger than a dispute. It was a turning of tides. Maya checked her watch. 45 p.m. She was 45 minutes late for the board meeting, but she no longer cared. What had transpired here was more powerful than any polished presentation upstairs. She picked up her briefcase, then paused, turning once more to the gathering that remained. This isn't about punishing one man. It's about creating a culture where dignity cannot be dismissed. That's what Union Federal must become, and it starts here, with all of you." Her words lingered, echoing long after she ascended the stairs with Stephen trailing nervously behind. Upstairs, the boardroom was already buzzing, but Maya knew her story would hit the table like thunder, and when it did, there would be no going back. By the time Dr. Maya Ellison stepped into the boardroom, the tension was as thick as the mahogany table that stretched the length of the room. Executives in sharp suits leaned back in leather chairs, whispers darting between them like restless birds. 45 minutes had passed since the meeting's scheduled start, but no one had dared to adjourn. They all knew something was unfolding downstairs. Maya entered without apology, her presence filling the space before she even spoke. Stephen Marsh trailed behind her, his shoulders slumped, his face pale. Angela Reed had remained in the lobby, already stepping into her new role, while Linda Perez gathered her notes. Maya carried not just her briefcase, but the weight of the lobby scene, the witnesses, the resignation, the promise of reform. She placed her briefcase gently on the table and looked around. Her voice, when it came, was calm but edged with steel. "I apologize for my delay. I was occupied with matters downstairs." The directors exchanged wary glances. One of them, a silver-haired man named Charles Denton, cleared his throat. "We heard there was some sort of disturbance at the Midtown branch. Is everything under control?" Maya said slowly. "Is a dangerous word when it means silence. Yes, there was a disturbance, but it was not caused by the customer you may have heard about. It was caused by your branch manager." Murmurs rippled. Charles frowned. "Robert Kane. He's been with the bank nearly 15 years, and in 15 years, Maya replied, he learned he could humiliate customers, dismiss staff, and weaponize bias without consequence. Today, he learned otherwise." Stephen shifted uncomfortably, wishing he could shrink into the carpet. Maya continued, her tone precise, deliberate. "Robert Kane has resigned, not by choice, but by accountability. The lobby witnessed it. Customers live-streamed it, and now the world is already watching." Phones buzzed around the table as executives glanced at headlines appearing on their screens. "Bank manager calls 911 on black woman. Turns out she owns the bank." "CEO confronts racism in real time. Union Federal faces reckoning." The board members sat straighter. What had seemed like an internal incident was already spiraling into public narrative. Maya allowed the headlines to sink in before she spoke again. "This is not a public relations crisis. This is a moral reckoning, and we will respond not with spin, but with reform." Another director, Helen Park, adjusted her glasses. "Reform is a broad word. Dr. Ellison, what exactly do you propose?" Maya opened her briefcase and slid a folder across the table. Inside was a blueprint she had prepared months ago, anticipating a moment like this, though never knowing how it would arrive. The title read, "Dignity First Protocol." She began walking them through it, her voice steady, her cadence deliberate. Every branch will implement real-time feedback stations where customers can report experiences directly to headquarters. Every staff member will receive mandatory training in bias interruption and equitable service. Complaints will be audited quarterly by an independent body, not brushed aside by management, and whistleblowers will be rewarded, not punished. The room shifted uneasily. Numbers, men and women, exchanged skeptical glances. Charles Denton leaned forward. Do you realize the cost of such measures? Independent audits, training hours, system upgrades, it could be millions. Maya met his gaze without blinking. Do you realize the cost of ignoring dignity? Today's live stream has already been viewed by over 200,000 people. By morning, it will be millions. How much do you think our reputation is worth? How much do you think silence will cost us? Silence fell again, but this time it was thoughtful, not defensive. Helen Park leaned in, her expression thoughtful. And who oversees this protocol, who ensures it's not just a document gathering dust? Maya smiled faintly. I will, but not alone. I will appoint a director of equity and customer advocacy, someone independent, with direct access to me and this board. That role will ensure no voice is silenced again. Stephen Marsh felt sweat bead at his temples. He knew his name wouldn't be on the short list for that role. He shifted in his chair, trying to appear supportive while silently calculating how much of his career could still be salvaged. Another board member, a woman named Evelyn Brooks, spoke up. I think the market will reward this. People want to see institutions owning their failures and making tangible change. The alternative is becoming another headline in a long list of scandals. Maya nodded. Precisely. But this isn't about chasing market trends. It's about building a foundation where every customer, whether depositing $50 or $50,000, is treated with equal dignity. The boardroom quieted again, her words sinking deeper than spreadsheets or quarterly reports. For the first time, some of the executives saw beyond the balance sheets to the human faces in the lobby downstairs. Stephen finally cleared his throat, his voice thin. Dr. Ellison, if I may, I accept responsibility for failing to address earlier complaints. I want to be part of the solution moving forward. Maya studied him, her eyes sharp but not cruel. Then your actions will speak louder than your apologies. You will spearhead the first regional audit, and every deficiency uncovered will be documented with your signature. If you fail again, your resignation will not be voluntary. Stephen's throat tightened. Understood. The board members glanced between Maya and Stephen, sensing the balance of power had shifted irrevocably. The old culture of brushing aside complaints had died in the lobby downstairs. What rose in its place was uncertain, but it was undeniably new. Maya closed the folder. This is not optional. This is the future of Union Federal, and for those unwilling to embrace it, the door is open. No one spoke. No one moved toward the door. Maya picked up her briefcase, signaling the meeting's end. Prepare for tomorrow. The world will not wait, and neither will I. As she exited, Stephen followed a step behind, chastened but clinging to the chance of redemption. The other directors sat in silence, digesting what had just transpired. Some were anxious, some inspired, but all of them understood they had witnessed not a presentation, but a pivot in the very soul of their institution. Downstairs, Angela Reed was already taking calls from other branches. Ruth Gallagher's video continued to ripple across the internet, drawing comments, debates, and applause. And in the quiet corners of the city, customers who had once felt invisible began to whisper to themselves, maybe something really is changing. By dawn the next morning, the story had already left the marble lobby and boardroom and had leapt into the bloodstream of America. News anchors replayed Ruth Gallagher's shaky livestream on every major network. Headlines sprawled across front pages. Bank manager calls police on black woman. She was the CEO. Clips circulated with millions of views. Maya's calm words, "Nothing here is out of my hands," became a rallying refrain on social media. Memes, tweets, TikToks. The internet transformed a moment of attempted humiliation into a story of quiet power. Maya sat at her kitchen table, a steaming cup of coffee untouched beside her laptop. The screen glowed with news alerts, think pieces, even invitations for interviews. She skimmed them, but her focus wasn't on the noise, it was on the impact. She clicked on one video of Ruth Gallagher, interviewed outside the branch. The elderly woman held her phone up like a badge. "I wasn't about to let him lie," Ruth said, her voice shaking but firm. That woman stood there with more dignity than I've ever seen. I thought, if she can be calm, then I can be brave. Maya's lips curved into a soft smile. It wasn't her title or wealth that moved Ruth. It was her composure, her refusal to bow. That, Maya knew, was the seed of change. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Angela Reed, Dr. Ellison. "Customers are coming in just to say thank you. Some said they closed accounts years ago after bad treatment, but now they want to come back. The staff is nervous but hopeful. We're cleaning house." Maya typed back, "Hold steady. This is just the beginning." At 9:00 a.m., she walked into the Union Federal Headquarters. Reporters clustered outside, microphones thrust forward, flashes popping. She did not stop to answer. Her silence was strategy. Let the story unfold through actions, not sound bites. Inside, she convened a press conference in the atrium. Cameras lined up, red lights blinking. The board stood behind her, visibly uneasy but united under her command. Maya stepped to the podium. Her navy suit was immaculate, her tone steady. "Yesterday, many of you witnessed an incident at our Midtown branch. A manager abused his authority, dismissed a customer, and weaponized emergency services against her. What you did not know at first was that I was that customer." The room hushed, cameras zooming in. I stood quietly, and I was called a trespasser. I remained calm, and I was labeled aggressive. I carried ownership papers in my briefcase, yet my dignity was denied at the door. Her eyes scanned the room. That experience is not unique to me. It is the reality many face daily, without a camera to record or a title to defend them. That ends here. She laid out the Dignity First protocol for the nation to hear real-time reporting, independent audits, whistleblower protections, mandatory training. Her words were not lofty promises, but concrete steps. This institution will not measure success solely in profits. We will measure it in trust, in fairness, in the dignity of every person who walks through our doors. To those who have felt unseen, unheard, or disrespected, we see you now, and we will do better. The applause that followed was cautious at first, then grew stronger. Even reporters clapped. Their objectivity momentarily surrendered to conviction. Stephen Marsh stood stiffly at her side. his jaw tight. He knew cameras were catching his every expression. He also knew his name appeared in dozens of emails flagged for ignoring complaints. He would have to prove his repentance in public view. After the press conference, Maya returned to her office. The sunlight spilled across her desk, but her thoughts were darker. She remembered her father, denied a small business loan despite perfect credit. She remembered her mother's weary sighs. They had carried quiet wounds that rarely made headlines. Now, perhaps, their pain could mean something. Her phone buzzed again, an unknown number. She answered. Dr. Ellison, a deep voice said, "This is Congressman Harris. We watched your press conference. I believe your reforms could serve as a national model. Would you be willing to testify at the next financial oversight hearing?" Maya paused, her hand tightening around the phone. Testify. It meant moving beyond her institution, into the glare of politics, policy, and scrutiny. It meant her personal story would be dissected, doubted, debated, but it also meant her story could ripple into systemic change. "Yes," she said finally, "I'll be there." That night, the news cycle spun faster. Clips of Maya's speech ran alongside commentary from experts. Some praised her courage, others questioned her motives, but one theme dominated accountability. At the Midtown branch, Angela locked the doors after closing. She exhaled deeply. Exhaustion etched into her bones. Yet she felt something stirring a new atmosphere, fragile but real. Staff had whispered their fears, their hopes, their relief that Robert was gone. Customers had shaken her hand, thanking her for speaking up. Linda Perez stayed late, typing up her account of years under Robert's shadow. For the first time, she felt her words might matter, and in her small apartment, Ruth Gallagher scrolled through comments on her video. Thousands of strangers thanked her for her courage. She wiped her eyes, whispering, "All I did was tell the truth." But sometimes, truth was all it took. The invitation to testify spread through the news like wildfire. Pundits debated whether Dr. Maya Ellison's reforms at Union Federal could mark a turning point for the entire banking industry. Some praised her decisiveness. Others accused her of using one dramatic incident to push an agenda. Yet, beneath the noise, ordinary people were speaking louder than analysts. Letters poured into Maya's office. Handwritten envelopes from retirees, emails from students drowning in debt, social media messages from small business owners denied fair treatment. Many shared the same refrain: "Your story is our story." Maya read them late at night, alone in her office. One letter from Detroit stood out. A man named Clarence described how he had been escorted out of a bank after asking about a small loan for his auto shop. "They looked at me like I was trying to steal." He wrote, "When I saw you stand there, calm while they lied about you, I felt like you were standing for me too." Her throat tightened as she folded the letter back into its envelope. It wasn't just about Union Federal anymore. It was about the fabric of trust that had been fraying for decades. Meanwhile, at the Midtown branch, Angela Reed was learning the burdens of leadership. Her days stretched long, filled with meetings, customer complaints, and staff training. Yet she approached each task with the same honesty that had carried her into Maya's trust. One afternoon, she overheard a teller reassuring a customer. "Things are different now. We have a new manager who listens." Angela felt tears prick her eyes. For the first time in years, she believed it was true. Linda Perez worked quietly beside her, sorting through old records, surfacing complaints long buried. She uncovered patterns customers consistently flagged as high risk despite strong profiles, loans denied with flimsy excuses. It painted a picture not of isolated bias, but systemic neglect. She passed the files to Angela, who sent them to headquarters with a single note: "This cannot continue." Stephen Marsh, meanwhile, lived in the shadow of scrutiny. Every move he made was under Maya's microscope. His staff avoided his office, wary of being seen as loyal to the old guard. Each night, he wondered if he should resign before the storm consumed him. Yet, he clung to the thread of redemption Maya had offered. He told himself he could change, but change required more than promises. The media frenzy only grew. Ruth Gallagher became an unexpected folk hero. Interviewers asked how a 73-year-old grandmother found the courage to live stream injustice. Her answer was always the same: because silence lets lies live too long. Her words traveled far, sparking conversations in living rooms and churches across the country. And then came the congressional hearing. The chamber filled with lawmakers, reporters, and advocates. Cameras rolled live on every major network. Maya sat at the witness table, her navy suit immaculate, a calm poise settling over her. Congressman Harris opened the floor. "Dr. Ellison, thank you for joining us. The nation has seen what happened at your bank. We want to know, is this just one story, or is it a symptom of something larger?" Maya leaned toward the microphone. "It is larger. What happened to me happens to countless Americans every day. The difference is, I had the resources to fight back. Many do not. This isn't just about one manager. It's about a culture that tolerates bias, excuses neglect, and measures value in profit alone. If we ignore dignity, we forfeit trust, and without trust, no financial institution can survive." Her words rang through the chamber. Lawmakers nodded, reporters scribbled, some skeptics pressed harder, asking if her reforms were realistic. Maya didn't flinch. She outlined the Dignity First protocol again, explaining its mechanics, its costs, its necessity. "This isn't charity," she said. "It's sustainability. It ensures that every customer, regardless of race, gender, or income level, can rely on fairness. That trust will bring more business than any ad campaign ever could." The hearing ended with applause, rare in such halls. Headlines that evening read, "Bank CEO Turns Humiliation into National Reform." Back at Union Federal, the ripple effects were immediate. Other banks began announcing their own reviews, some preemptively adopting similar measures. Advocacy groups praised Maya's testimony, while critics admitted, however grudgingly, that she had struck a chord with the public. At home, Maya finally exhaled. She sat on her balcony overlooking the Atlanta skyline, the city lights twinkling like scattered stars. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a moment of quiet. Yet even in stillness, her mind replayed the lobby, the sting of Robert's words, the weight of silence, the courage of strangers who spoke. Her phone buzzed, a message from Angela. We had a customer cry at the counter today. She said it was the first time in her life she felt respected in a bank. I thought you'd want to know." Maya closed her eyes, her lips curving into a soft, tired smile. This was why the fight mattered. Not the headlines, not the politics, but the small victories in quiet lobbies where dignity had too long been denied. The storm was far from over. But, for the first time, Maya felt the tide turning not just for her, but for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. Months after the congressional hearing, the Midtown branch of Union Federal Bank looked nothing like the tense marble lobby where it all began. Sunlight streamed through freshly polished windows, bouncing off posters that read, "Every voice matters. Every customer counts." The atmosphere was lighter, less suspicious. Customers entered with shoulders relaxed, not braced for judgment. Angela Reed sat at her desk near the teller line, reviewing the latest customer satisfaction reports. The numbers held steady 4.8 out of 5 across all demographics, with almost no disparities between groups. She tapped the edge of the paper, letting the relief settle in. Change had taken root. She thought back to the day she'd first hidden her phone under the counter, documenting Derek's cruelty, unsure if it would ever matter. Now, her documentation had helped build a case for transformation. Linda Perez walked over, carrying a stack of community loan applications. "We've approved 12 this week," she said, her voice tinged with pride. "Half of them are minority-owned startups. One woman is opening a bakery just 3 blocks from here. She told me she almost gave up after being rejected before, but the new program gave her hope." Angela smiled. "That's the difference, isn't it? Not just numbers, but hope." Meanwhile, Stephen Marsh faced his reckoning. After months of review, Maya had offered him a choice: resign with a measure of dignity or remain under strict probation, monitored closely by compliance auditors. Stephen chose resignation. At his farewell, he confessed to Angela, "I thought keeping numbers up was enough. I forgot that numbers mean nothing if people lose faith. Don't make my mistake." His departure sent a quiet message across the organization: oversight without humanity was no longer acceptable. Mrs. Ruth Gallagher remained an icon. Her video had been viewed nearly 5 million times, sparking a nationwide movement under the hashtag Banking with Dignity. Universities invited her to speak about civic courage, and she always ended her talks the same way: "I'm no hero. I just didn't want lies to win, and neither should you." Her voice became a symbol that age never diminished the power to stand up. For Robert Kane, life had changed beyond recognition. Once confident in his untouchable authority, he now worked a modest sales job in a suburban strip mall. His reputation in banking was unsalvageable. His name whispered as a cautionary tale in compliance seminars. Each time he saw a bank branch, shame rose in his chest. He had become the face of arrogance undone by prejudice. Back in her corporate office, Maya Ellison balanced 2 worlds: the daily demands of running Horizon Capital Partners and her growing role as a public advocate for systemic fairness. Invitations poured in from Harvard Business School to grassroots community groups in small towns. She accepted many, not because she craved attention, but because she understood the power of narrative. Her story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who had been silenced, dismissed, or pushed aside. One chilly November morning, she visited the bakery Linda had mentioned. The smell of fresh bread filled the air as a young woman named Marisol handed Maya a warm croissant. "I wouldn't be here without you," Marisol said. "Banks used to look at me and see a risk. Now they see a person with a dream. You changed that." Maya held the croissant, feeling the weight of the words. It was moments like these, small and human, that made the long battles worth it. Yet Maya also carried the memory of the day in the lobby. At night, when the city quieted, she could still hear Robert's voice dripping with disdain, still feel the sting of being told she belonged at the welfare office. But instead of letting those memories wound her, she used them as fuel. Each insult had been converted into reform, each moment of silence into a mandate for courage. She often replayed the scene in her mind, the hush of customers, the buzz of the live stream, the disbelief when her identity was revealed. But what stood out most wasn't Robert's collapse. It was the way ordinary people Angela, Ruth, Officer Simmons had shifted the tide by choosing truth over silence. At a staff gathering marking the branch's 6-month anniversary of transformation, Maya addressed the employees. "I've been asked countless times what made that day different. Why did it matter so much? The truth is, injustice happens every day. What made the difference was that people refused to be silent." Angela documented, Ruth live-streamed, customers spoke up, and I used the power I had. Together, we created accountability. The room erupted in applause, but Maya lifted her hand gently. "Don't applaud me alone. Applaud yourselves. Because this isn't about one call, it's about thousands of voices demanding better." Her words echoed far beyond that room. Media outlets picked them up, advocacy groups quoted them, and employees across the Union Federal Network taped them to their desks. In the months that followed, Union Federal launched the Gallagher Initiative, a program empowering customers to provide real-time feedback directly to corporate headquarters. Complaints could no longer be buried in branch-level bureaucracy. Transparency was non-negotiable. Other banks followed suit, not out of pure goodwill, but because public pressure demanded it. Industry conferences buzzed with talk of cultural audits, customer dignity protocols, and inclusive leadership training. What once seemed radical was quickly becoming standard. And through it all, Maya remained both leader and witness. She bore the scars of humiliation, but also the clarity of transformation. She had seen how quickly prejudice could strip dignity, and how just as quickly truth could restore it. One evening, sitting again on her balcony, she received a call from Angela. "Dr. Ellison, I thought you should know. A young black man came in today to open his first account. He told me. I saw the video of what happened here, and it gave me the courage to trust a bank again. I thought you'd like to hear that." Maya looked out over the city lights. "Yes," she said softly. "I needed to hear that." The story had begun with a moment of cruelty, magnified by a phone camera. It had swelled into a storm of accountability, reshaped an institution, and stirred a national reckoning. But its greatest legacy was quieter, a bakery on a corner. A young man opening an account without fear, a grandmother reminding a nation not to stay silent. Because every injustice, when faced with courage, can become a catalyst for change. And every act of dignity, whether live-streamed or whispered, can echo longer than the insult that sparked it. Life teaches us that respect cannot be bought, but it can be denied in the smallest of ways. This story reminds us that dignity is not a privilege. It is a right. Dr. Maya Ellison endured the sting of being judged by her skin before anyone cared to learn who she truly was. Yet, instead of responding with anger, she responded with clarity, with proof, and with purpose. For those of us who have lived long enough, we know that injustice is not new. Many of us have felt the quiet cut of prejudice, sometimes in places as ordinary as a grocery store, a hospital, or a bank. But this moment shows us that silence only allows injustice to grow. It was not just Maya's strength, but also the courage of ordinary witnesses, a grandmother who live-streamed, a teller who documented that turned humiliation into reform. The lesson is clear. Our voices matter at every age. Whether we're 30 or 70, choosing to speak up can protect not only our own dignity but also the dignity of generations to come. Thank you for being here and sharing this journey with us. If this story touched you, please give it a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that remind us of the strength of dignity and justice.